Here we go. Huh? Hello? This is all but a dream. Okay. You've been sedated by some very diabolical people after secrets that are implanted within your head, and I'm here to help you. Why not? Now I realize this can all be very hard to believe and understand, but I assure you that I am... What? Yeah, well, when your diet generally consists of this, you tend to just roll with the weird shit that starts popping up in front of you. Okay, this may just be coming from the fact that I am an astral projection of yourself, but, do you need help? Oh, no, I don't have a problem or anything. It's just hard times all around. Well, it's kind of going sideways if you haven't noticed. So, you say you got a movie I must review, Okay, this was 10 times easier than I initially thought it was going to be. I thought you'd question the reality of all this being possible. I mean, I thought you'd say this would be insane, illogical, albeit impossible, considering the fact that I am literally you and we are just talking as if it were some regular other Wednesday. Look, it can't be much weirder than the stuff that's regularly going on in the world nowadays. Now, would you just tell me what I need to do? You know what? As a matter of fact, that's actually all pretty damn fair. But, yes, we must do this review in order to save your very life. Now, as I said before, there are very, very sinister men after information inside your head. We must act swiftly if we're going to save you. Now, the only way to do so in this short amount of time is to train you in the very same way that you were raised. Through television and movies. In fact, there happens to be one very specific movie that is going to help save you in ways that you can't even imagine. That sounds simple enough. What's the flick? The movie is not like ones you've done before. The movie is one that takes commonplace philosophy and fiction and turns it into its own twisted and confusing facts of nature. A movie so batshit insane that it took the director of not one, but 2 good Batman movies just to get things right. A movie so insane and illogical that it questions the minds of the intellectual and the non-intellectual at the same time to this very, very day. Well, I hate to urge your elbow there, buddy, but I don't think you're ever going to be able to find a movie that convoluted and specific for me to review. Hey there, guys. Welcome back to After the Credits. It's episode number 2 here. This is going to be a much different review compared to the last one where we took a look at Top Gun, because today we are taking a look at one of the biggest mind trips of a movie, probably on purpose, I would say, that I've ever seen in quite a while. I'm talking about the 2010 sci-fi action blockbuster. Yeah, this is still a blockbuster, just like Top Gun, and it does deserve it in a way, and I'll get to why later on. But this is the 2010 sci-fi action blockbuster Inception. Now, this is only my second time ever seeing this movie, and it's actually the first time I've seen it since it like first came out. I first saw this movie in 2010 with my grandparents when I was, spent some time over there with them and everything, and they said, "Hey, let's go see a movie." And of course, I'm 24 years old right now, so I think 14-year-old me had like no real interest in seeing any real grown up movies because I wasn't really too into anything that was really like mind jarring or challenging to me at the time yet. I hadn't really gotten into drama or theater yet, so I kind of was at the mercy of like, all right, let's I'll just let them choose, and they chose this one, which thankfully had action in it. They could have picked any other movie, which could have been boring as sin, but thankfully they spared me because they love me and I love them. But they took me to go see this, and I didn't know a thing that was going on the whole movie. I was there because it was the movies. I loved going to the movies even before I had the appreciation for them that I do now. And I just was like, all right, I'll roll with it. I'm seeing a movie. They're paying for it. They're giving me popcorn and soda and all that. So I'm just gonna roll with the punches. And I remember being pretty entertained by it. I had no idea what was going on. The only people I knew in the movie were Leonardo DiCaprio, and I didn't know who directed it. I didn't know who else was acting. I just knew Leonardo DiCaprio because I had seen Titanic and that really really weird version of Romeo and Juliet that he did because I watched it in school and everything. So I only knew him because he was still such a big megastar. I mean, even way back then. So that's kind of my history with the movie. So I literally haven't seen the movie since then. That was the only time I've ever seen it. I knew I'd seen it before. I didn't really remember a whole lot about it. I knew the basic plot. Rewatching it this time on Netflix, and it was easier to follow me now because I understand movies a lot better. But still, this one is way different from Top Gun, you guys. It was a much different trip. With Top Gun, like I said, you can just turn your brain off, watch it. You don't need to care about what's going on. You know what you're there for. You're here to see Tom Cruise and all these other guys fly the jet planes, kick some ass, look cool doing it, sound cool doing it. Again, I was not a huge fan of a lot of the dialogue in that movie, but again, you knew exactly what you're getting with Top Gun. And with Inception, I wouldn't say you know what you're getting, but it's a lot clearer as to. Well, it's not as clear as to what you're getting. I should say it's a lot more mysterious, which it like unfolds as the movie goes along. Inception doesn't it's not like Top Gun in the sense where when Top Gun starts, you pretty much have a good idea where this is going. With Inception, once they kind of like explain what the plot is and what the main goal of the movie is for the characters, you're kind of surprised that it's taken this turn, but it's like, all right, I mean, I'm going to roll with it because this is insane, and it's actually it's very interesting. They play with a lot of like points that I actually kind of like found myself thinking about a lot after the movie and everything. Like, there's sci-fi completely, like, there's no way this could ever happen, but I'm always like curious, because the human mind is one of the most like, complex and, or even just the brain itself, like on any creature, is one of the most complex and extraordinary things that you could possibly study. So to have a movie explore that in such a unique and creative way was a really good refresher, like compared to most of the stuff I usually watch. So like I said, when I first saw this movie, I had no idea who was the director, who was acting in it, anything like that. But when I saw the credits for this movie, I was blown away. Like, holy shit, this was just a star-studded movie, and this was just a star-studded movie, and it was amazing that I didn't know more names. When I started seeing people, when I started watching it, like now, and I started seeing people, I'm like, holy shit, you're in this movie. What in the frick is this cast? So just like to give you like a quick rundown of some of the people who are in this movie, you got, of course, Leonardo DiCaprio playing the main person. Then again, I was shocked when I saw this guy. It was Tom Hardy. It's 2010, and I'm seeing Tom Hardy and Leonardo DiCaprio together before they ever even did what was it what was the one that won him the Oscar finally. That wilderness movie that where he fought a bear or whatever. He was so I just see them meeting in this like random ass this bar in like the middle of Morocco or something like that, and I was like, holy crap, I can't believe I'm watching Venom and and Jack from Titanic just talking out about the human mind and stuff right now. This is kind of trippy, and I'm enjoying it. But so you got Leo, you got Tom Hardy, you got Ellen Page, who, if you don't know who that is, she was Juno in that one big hit movie way back when. And if you don't know her from that, she was the girl who could phase through walls in X-Men in all those movies. So that's how you can know her. Then you also got Michael Caine, which I was kind of disappointed was in this movie, because if you got Michael Caine, who, if you don't know, is one of the top tier actors out there. If you don't know who he is, if you've ever heard someone try to do a Cockney accent like this, yeah, they're trying to copy pretty much Michael Caine, because he's got such distinct and unique voice, and everyone's always trying to copy it. And this is usually the go-to when you try to start showing someone how to do a Cockney accent. But that's a really mediocre impression. Don't ever take voice lessons from me. But yeah, so they got Michael Caine playing Leonardo DiCaprio's, I think, is his father, either that or his father-in-law. But it's weird, because he's in such a minor role, you would completely forget he's in this movie, even if I saw it say I watched it now. Say if I watched this 10 years later, I'd probably remember Leo's in this movie, and Tom Hardy, and some of the other guys. But if you told me Michael Caine was in this movie, I'd be like, nah, there's no way Michael. And then when he shows up, it's like, what the fuck's Michael Caine doing in this movie? And it's I don't know. So it's weird to see him in this, but play such a minor role, because he's barely in the movie. He's maybe 5-6 minutes tops, no more than 20 lines of dialogue, I would say. It's a really weird part. I'm surprised he even took the role. But another person who was in this movie was Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Then you got Ken Watanabe, which, if you don't know him, he's pretty. If you've seen any American movie ever and it needs a badass, tough sounding Japanese guy, it's probably Ken Watanabe. So that's who that is. So it's got a pretty big cast. It's got a really big cast. So I was that's kind of what maybe you'll kind of put in the same file as Top Gun, because we got a cast that big, and again, this came out during the summer and everything. So when we got a cast that big, and it did this well at the box office, and it still got that level of action and everything, I think it's fair to say that it's still kind of one of those blockbuster kind of movies. Because the way I describe a blockbuster is, you got a good cast of people, a very recognizable cast of people that even the common moviegoers oh cool, so and so's in this movie. Then again, number two, for me to say that it's a blockbuster, it's got to be action packed. Gotta be that. That is a non-negotiable thing. Again, with this movie, I don't care if you're talking about the human mind. I don't care if you're talking about Plato's philosophy from back in 420 BC or whatever. But it's gotta have some explosions. Gotta have some gunfire. It's gotta have people punching and kicking and dying and stuff like that. There's gotta be some action. That is, if you're gonna describe yourself as a blockbuster, that is absolutely non-negotiable. There is no way around that part. And number three is big return on the box office. You gotta have. You got to make your money back, obviously. There's no way, any, again, you don't see an Independence Day, you don't see Top Gun, you don't see any, the Terminator, Predator movies or anything like that, losing money on stuff like this, unless maybe some of the ones nowadays, but that's for different. I'm talking about, the ones that set the foundation for what makes a movie a blockbuster. And the reason, number three is well, why does it matter if a movie makes money to make it a blockbuster if you already got the two? Well, because what really makes it a blockbuster is showing that hey, this movie is killing it right now, and this movie fucking killed it. You thought Top Gun made money? This movie made freaking bank hand over foot. On $100 million budget, they made over $830 million on this movie. That is a blockbuster if I've ever. Those are blockbuster numbers if I've ever heard them in my life. That is insane return on a movie. Again, you think oh man, you spent $100 million to make it. Again, between that, advertising, and everything else, they must have made at least another $50 million on top of that 830 easy. I don't know if the numbers, I was looking at Wikipedia, I don't know if the numbers reflect that as well, but that is an insane return on a movie. That is ridiculous. Another thing, real quick, before I move on to the actual aspects of the movie and everything, the person who directed this movie was actually, again, this like blew my mind because now I'm like 24 and I got this big appreciation for movies and everything. I know more names when it comes to cinema and stuff like that. It was directed by Christopher Nolan. Batman and Christian Bale, Christopher Nolan. Like, I swear to God, I had to double check this when I saw the names and the credits and everything. I'm like, there's no freaking way. Like, what, like a year or two outside of making the Batman movies, I think, or even he may have already been making them already, but that he took the time to make Inception. But again, like that's kind of like what everyone knows, like Christopher Nolan for now. And now I'll never forget. Like, wow, he made those Batman movies and Inception. That is insane. This man is way more talented than I initially gave him credit for. Kudos to you, Mr. Nolan. And fun fact, it was actually produced by his wife, so I guess they really had some big faith in this project. And I mean, for obvious reasons, because the movie was such a big success. The plot of the movie is, oh man, so like I said, with Top Gun, you had to turn your brain off. Make sure whenever they are talking about the rules to this movie and like the actual like plot and everything like that you're paying attention, like because you will get lost so fast with some like how some of the rules in this work. Basically, what it is I guess through pseudoscience or whatever it is like that, the government has developed technology that allows people to enter others' dreams. And Leonardo DiCaprio and his crew, they play what are known as extractors, who pretty much go into people's minds and they manipulate it, like through this projected subconscious simulation, I guess is the best way to call it. They're able to get other people's secrets and business intel or something like that for major corporations. It's pretty much like global espionage or something like that. It's incredibly insane. It's basically the way I guess I can best describe it. It's a militarized version of the Jedi mind trick. It's like a way of like going into someone's mind and physically taking out, well, not physically, but actively attacking someone's mind until you can either A, get the information you want, or B, get them to believe what you want. Because that's pretty much what the plot of the movie is. They get hired by by Ken Watanabe, who's like the president of a major energy corporation, and he's saying, hey, I need you guys to implant an idea in this guy's mind. And they're like, impossible, there's no way that we can do that. And they're like, why not? Oh, and he says, like, well, why not? Because I mean, I guess it's apparently very, very hard to plant an idea in someone else's head, which this is kind of like where I have such a new appreciation for the film, because I didn't give it enough credit when I first saw it, how creative, this is. Because I have a hard time making up rules for a game that I'm playing with some friends or something like that. Like if we're playing cards or something like that, or if we're just trying to goof around on a game online or something like that, we need to make up rules. I have a hard time doing that. So when I see that they made up all these rules for how you dream, how you can and can't plant an idea in someone's head to make it work, I have such a new appreciation for that, because it's so difficult to do, to come up with something that not only makes sense, but something that actually sounds logistic, like it actually could, if this technology existed, that's how this would actually work. And the way they describe it is really, really cool. The best way that they describe it is they're like, well, we can't plant an idea in someone else's head. It's really, really difficult to do. And they're asking, well, why is that? And this is, again, the big version of kind of like, with Top Gun, I said, show, don't tell. This is one of those ones where, again, through the process of the climax, everything they do eventually show you, but where telling you is kind of more acceptable at this time, instead of actually physically showing throughout the majority of it. But because they do just a well job of describing it. Like again, in Top Gun, if they had done a much better job of just saying, you broke the rules and it would have led to so and so and so, and really let that sink in, I would have let it slide a lot more. But with this one, they really hammer home why you can't plant an idea in someone else's head. And the reason is actually very simple. They said, well, say if I told you not to think of elephants, what would you be thinking of right now? And the guy's like, elephants. Yes, but I didn't put that idea in your head. You again, you're thinking that because I told you not to, not because you came up with it yourself. If you want an idea to properly stick in someone else's head when diving down into their subconscious, you need to have them make it think like it was their own idea, which is very, very hard to do. Like, again, even if you're doing that like with someone who's like completely awakened in the dream world and everything, it's really, really hard to get them to convince themselves that it was their idea when you were the one manipulating it and everything. It's again, it's a really fascinating thing to kind of watch them do and kind of create and move forward with, I guess, the movie goes on, because like as they're planning the big brain heist or whatever it is, they're kind of like they're using Tom Hardy's character, who's I guess a forger, and basically what like again like a forger, what does that mean? He can go into other people's minds, like he can study other people that they're maybe close to or something like that, and then just when he's in their dream or whatever, he can fully impersonate them, like he appears as that person. Like say if he wanted to come into my dream, he would study my mom or something like that and then become her in my subconscious. I wouldn't see him. I would see a projection of my mom, and he's just like so good at doing what he does. And again, it's weird. Like Tom Hardy's doing a British accent in this movie. I don't know if it's because they were trying to be a more diverse group of thieves or whatever like that. But I'm like, you could have just had him be Tom Hardy. It's not. I don't think the British accent was necessary, but it's fine as it is. He's an amazing actor, so I'm not gonna shit on Tom Hardy because he was doing a British accent that was unneeded throughout the whole majority of the film. So yeah, I'm gonna try to avoid as many spoilers as possible when it comes to describing the plot for this movie, because I really think it's one of those movies where you have to see it for yourself to fully appreciate it. And I don't want to give away too much, so I won't describe too much of what the plot is about, but basically just know that it's a militarized version of the Jedi mind trick, where he's like pretty much like, these are not the droids you're looking for. You're going to let us pass and not going to harm us whatsoever. It's pretty much that, except they go deep down and they plant those ideas in the guy's head so that they can achieve the goals that they want. And it's really, really cool to watch sometimes, honestly. But again, you have to really pay attention, because when they're describing the rules that go into how things work in the dream world, and how you wake up, and how if something happens this way, you might go to an even worse place afterwards when you wake up. It's you really need to pay attention to that stuff, because if you don't and you're watching and you're wondering what the hell's a kick, what the hell's a totem, why do they need to go to all these different lengths to do all this, it's just a matter of paying attention. And again, if you don't want to think during your movie, don't watch Inception. If you don't want to have to be thinking about anything, whether it's about the movie itself, about psychologically, what's going on afterwards, it's a huge trip, and I won't dare give away the ending. Again, that's another big reason. If you want to understand the ending to this movie, make sure you're paying attention, especially when they're talking about the parts about the totems, the little items that each of them have, because that is going to play a huge part in the ending. And again, when it's an ending that is still baffled people today. It's one of those big things that a lot of movies some movies are very famous for leaving their films open-ended, open to the audience's interpretation of how they went from there. And so again, some of the quick examples, Pulp Fiction, what's in the briefcase, we just see that it's this glowing golden light. We never know what's in the briefcase. I forget what the movie is, but it's where Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson are standing in the streets, and he whispers something to her, but we never hear what it is, and the movie just ends right there. And again, there's the ending to this movie, which I won't even try and describe, because I don't want to spoil it for you guys. It's a real if you're one of those people who needs to know what happened, it's a real fuck you ending to the audience. But I love it because I think it's such a nice little troll, especially knowing now that it was from Christopher Nolan and everything he did with the Batman movies. It was like, all right, I can find a whole much different kind of humor in this, because I remember as a kid it kind of pissed me off, because when I saw the end, I'm like, I just kind of turned to my grandfather and I was like, well, what happened? He's like, I don't know. He's like, so what did we just go through all that for? I want to know what happened. I want to know how all this actually ends. I don't want to just be sitting here wondering what if. But again, that was when I was a lot younger, and I didn't really understand movies as well as I do now. Now that I know more about movies and I have a much bigger appreciation for them, I think this ending is freaking phenomenal. I honestly couldn't see it ending any other way. I think it's a honestly the perfect ending to this movie. Like where a lot of people think it's kind of a cop out or it's kind of like selling itself short. I think it couldn't have ended any other way. There's no way it could have gone any other way than how it ended. Um, but overall, this movie is really, really creative and imaginative. Like, and the effects actually hold up pretty well for this movie. But when they're in the dreamscape itself, when they're in like the dream world and stuff like that, the things that they do in there are really, really creative. They do a whole lot, with redesigning the landscape and changing things to meet it for their own needs and stuff like that. And again, like it goes full sci-fi with it, which I think is just awesome. Like when something just completely embraces the concepts that it has in the palm of its hand and just goes the whole 9 yards with it. I think that's when a movie's at its best. Like again, like not like 9 yards like how with some of the latest Star Wars movies does, where it's like, oh well, let's just start doing this with all of our stuff. It's like no, you can't just start making up random shit as it goes along. And they don't make it like they don't just start randomly adding in stuff. They I mean they do add in stuff as the movie goes on, but it's like again stuff that would make sense. Like it's like it wasn't an issue before, but it's an issue now. So let's talk about why that's an issue, real quick, so that the audience can get up to speed. And again, they aren't like ridiculous like things like where it's in like oh the Force can heal people now. It's like what the fuck are you talking about? It's not something like oh if you die in your dream you die for real like in Nightmare on Elm Street. No, like again like they only like again they just there is like kind of a scenario like that, but it's a lot more descriptive and it's a lot more it's a lot more specific with why that would happen to you because it's under a very certain set of circumstances. It's not normal, but again, these aren't normal circumstances for the kind of job that they're doing. So it makes sense overall in the grand scheme of the movie. But again, like I said, it's so creative because I think the human mind is such an amazing mystery, like in a sense, because I think I'm pretty sure this has been proven to be a myth, but it's like we only use 10% of our brain, and I've always wondered, man, if I'm only using 10% of my brain, I wonder what what the other 90% would let me accomplish. And this movie kind of explores on that theory of if we're only using 10% of our brains, what if we made technology that lets us go in and dive in deeper and use the other 90%, or if or something like that. And I think it's just really, really cool that I think more movies need to do something like that where it just plays with concepts like that and just takes them to these really creative, amazing heights and just goes full on for lack of a better term, balls to the wall with it. Like just really describe and show what your world and what your ideas for this concept could really be. I think that would be help. I think that would actually help Hollywood a lot right now because there's so many complaints going on right now about how, and I do kind of voice the same thing about how there's no more original movies. There's no real creativity, and I think a movie like Inception caught me off guard so much because it was such a big change from the movies I normally see. Because now it's all again not to be standing on a soapbox saying we are the world or whatever, but it's mostly just reboots and sequels and stuff like that. You got the Star Wars movie, Jurassic Park. Pixar's finally moving away with it, but for the longest time they were just doing sequel after sequel after sequel. And again, same thing with Disney. They were just rehashing stuff. Again, if I ever get the chance to talk about it, the live action Disney movies, I'm not a fan of them. I will never support them. I don't think they are necessary whatsoever. But again, that's a story for another time. So yeah, in conclusion, Inception was a lot better than I thought it was going to be returning to it. I thought I was going to be bored out of my mind watching this movie, honestly. But it actually, it keeps you surprisingly invested in a lot of the stuff that it's doing. Which again, you would think for a movie that you've heard so much about through the grapevine and stuff like that would just be boring as sin, especially for a 2.5 hour movie. But it actually flows pretty well if you just sit down and watch it and kind of get into it. And you do get into it pretty easily. Again, these are very interesting concepts. And if you're even remotely interested in this kind of stuff, or you find this stuff fascinating like I do, then you'll find yourself kind of just encaptured in the whole experience. So if I had to rate this one, I would probably give it 4 out of 5 bags of popcorn. I give it a little bit less than Top Gun because again with Top Gun it was just it's Top Gun. I was expecting a lot more. I wouldn't say expecting a lot more. I was just I got a lot more out of it. But with Inception, it was a nice surprise, but it wasn't like that extra little push of ridiculousness and enjoyment that I got out of it. I got different types of enjoyment out of it. With Top Gun, I got exactly what I said. That popcorn, shoving down your face, like, oh my god, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. With Inception, it was a matter of I'm still getting that level of entertainment, but it's a different level of entertainment. It's that intellectual level of entertainment, and it's never it's not a bad thing. It's just you have to know that's what you're getting going into from the beginning. You can't just go into this mind and all right, blockbuster, let's see what we got. It's a very different kind of blockbuster, but it's a very good kind of blockbuster. So if again, even if you're not really into these kind of movies, whether it's sci-fi or thinking movies or stuff like that, I would definitely say give it a watch, because it never hurts to step outside your comfort zone when it comes to stuff like that. So I think this is a good movie to start where it comes to stepping outside your comfort zone, because it's got so many familiar faces. Like I said, Leonardo DiCaprio, Tom Hardy, stuff like that, and they do such a good job of making this interesting to hear, and you already know the faces from so many other movies and stuff like that, so you're more willing to kind of listen, which I guess is credit to the film, because again, they have such an endearing cast that has stayed relevant for so long. So I guess credit to the movie and credit to the actors themselves for putting in such a good performance on such a, I guess, kind of out there concept. But yeah, that's all I got to say about Inception. Hope you guys liked the video. If you liked what I had to say, or even if you disliked what I had to say, go ahead and drop a comment down below. Let us know what you thought, and we will see you next time. Take care, guys. Welcome to your nightmare, bitch! Yeah, that's fair. Fuck.